Welcome to Tips and Tricks video for Mechanicus 2 and Mechanicus faction. I'll cover some things to make the game easier. Depending on how much time I'll spend with the game, I might do Necron tips video too. This is mostly for Grim Darkness difficulty, but I don't see why these tips wouldn't work on lower difficulties. Leader builds and what works best for them is going to be in separate videos. Also, I've been playing the pre-release version, so I have no idea what changes developers are going to implement next and if these tips are going to work as well or work at all in future. This video is for the release date version of the game. Basic first tip is to save the game before and after each mission. Reason is that restarting a mission doesn't allow choosing different units and the leaders as we get stuck with the same ones. Another basic tip, which is extremely important for Grim Darkness, is to always target the enemy that you have enough options to kill before they can act. So watching the QE closely is crucial. Sometimes you'll want to retaliate immediately after the enemy damages one of your units, but that is a mistake. It's almost a wasted turn doing that. Reducing the amount of times the enemy can act and damage your units is key. So keeping emotions in check, not to be dragged into wasting a turn on an enemy that has acted already and can be easily dealt with before they can act next time, can be a difference between success and failure. After all, we are Adeptus Mechanicus, not Adeptus Emoticus. Restart Skirmish and Restart Mission options you'll be using a lot on Grim Darkness difficulty. Here's how both work and when to use them. For regular missions where we have multiple encounters per mission, there's not much use except for just restarting after failing or if we see we have no chance or are about to fail. Usually enemy setups are quite similar for regular missions even after restarting Skirmish or Mission. For Complex Assault, which is the most difficult mission type in the game, and Forge Defense, both options work great in their own capacity because it's a single fight, meaning single skirmish mission unlike the regular ones. So we can manipulate these fights with Restart Skirmish and Restart Mission options. Both of these options start with a full Vigilance meter, which means that reinforcements are going to spawn, making our life harder. That also means in both of these missions we can choose all stratagems without any downside, because the Vigilance meter is already full. Not every reinforcement group is of equal strength. To manipulate what reinforcements are going to spawn, use the Restart Mission option in Complex Assault and Forge Defense missions. With it, we can cycle through what type of reinforcements are going to spawn. When you're happy with the reinforcement setup, we can start using the Restart Skirmish option. Restart Skirmish doesn't change the reinforcement group, except where they are going to be placed on the battlefield, but instead it changes everything else. There can be many different enemy setups, entirely different from one another, which can lead to easier missions because some enemy combinations are downright impossible to deal with in the early to mid game before we level leaders and unlock more forged temples, which in turn leads to better units and unit upgrades. To recap, in Complex Assault and Forge Defense missions, use Restart Mission first to manipulate enemy reinforcements, and then use Restart Skirmish to manipulate all other enemies. There are two enemy types that I try to avoid at all costs. This is one. It's a proper bastard, as it can shoot across the whole map, killing almost everything we have in one hit. OP as hell.
The blade.
Another OP Necron unit that needs to be avoided are smaller Praetorians. There are two Praetorian versions, smaller and bigger with halberds. Ones with halberds are not as problematic, even though they are still powerful enough to want to avoid them, but the smaller ones are utterly ridiculous. Their jump needs nerfing, because it can do so much AoE damage, and they also have another OP attack that they do after jump, which crushes armor and defense. Oh yeah, and they can attack once more after all of that. Even the tankiest of units can get annihilated by these fuckers. In some missions we can't avoid them, so what I do is I bait them with servitors. Put the servitor to Praetorian's closest possible location and let them have fun with a lowly servitor. Then swarm the bastard with other units. Just make sure to always have 2 empty hexes between every unit when dealing with Praetorians, otherwise they will wreck every unit that their jump AoE can reach. Now let's talk a bit about the early game. It's the hardest part so far from what I've experienced. When going on early missions, pay attention to the Vigilance meter. Play it safe and forget about stratagems. There is a balanced discrepancy between Mechanicus and the Necrons, where higher tier Necron units are going to start appearing way before our higher tier units. That also means reinforcements from Vigilance can be tougher and we can't manipulate them with restart mission option, because then we have to play the whole mission from the start. Couple additional reinforcement units make a significant difference in skirmish difficulty during the early game. Later, with better leader upgrades and higher tier units, it's not that big of a deal, but early on it's a huge deal. So avoid filling up the Vigilance meter until you've become quite comfortable with the game and have figured out what works and what doesn't. Mainly when your units start matching Necron units. You might say, well, what about farming requisitions and fragments with stratagems? I am 40 hours in the campaign on highest preset difficulty and got so much requisition and fragments I don't know what to do with them, and I haven't done anything specific to farm any of the two. Early on you might run out of requisitions in a way that you can't field every unit you desire, but that's why servitors are there. They are very useful for tanking hits, grabbing attention and generating cognition points from taking hits. Let them suffer while the better units deal with enemies focusing on servitors. Speaking of best units, early on at the start, Vanguard units are the best. They have irradiated weapons, so when they hit an enemy they also apply damage over time. That damage over time is the worst thing that can happen to Necrons because it nullifies their reanimation protocols. Instead of reanimating, they will permanently die from damage over time once it's their next turn. Not having to waste attacks on an already dead enemy is a big deal. Another fantastic unit that requires 2 Forge Temples are the Flying Flame Boys. I still use them frequently every chance I get because they easily deal with lower level units, chip a bit at every enemy that doesn't have armor, have fantastic maneuverability and apply the Luminogen effect, which makes enemies take maximum damage for one turn from all attacks. They are simply incredible. So those are the tips for Adeptus Mechanicus faction. It's gonna help tremendously without a doubt as long as developers don't change things. If they do, post in comments what's changed. Patreon, subscribe, our merch links in the description, and thanks for watching.